Hi guys, Cabal TGN, and in this video we're going to talk about some recommendations that you can use to increase your DPS regardless of your class and spec. Okay, now before we start, I want you to keep in mind that these are merely recommendations and you don't have to follow them to be a good player. I figure that they helped me a lot, so maybe they can help you too. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. Let's begin with the very first recommendation, which is to prefer key bindings over clicking. It's a lot easier to press a key than it is to mouse over an icon and click it. Okay, so one way of doing this is I'm going to demonstrate running in and casting Fire Blast on a mob by using a key binding. So all I have to do is just run in, target the mob, press the key, and there we go. Pretty straightforward. Okay, now if you're going to do the same thing by clicking, then you don't simply run in, target, and press a key. You have to actually mouse over the icon and keep your hands steady. And then when you're within range, actually let's do it on this one right here. When you're within range, then you click like that. So you're sort of having to do a little bit more to accomplish the same thing as a clicker. Now this is actually pretty closely tied to another recommendation, which is to prefer using the mouse to turn versus the keyboard. So let me show you how easy it is to do a spin turn Fire Blast if I'm using the mouse to move and a key binding. So let's target this one right here, and I'm going to run in close, and then I'm going to run away, spin turn, Fire Blast. Very easy, as you can see. Okay, now let's attempt to do a spin turn Fire Blast using the keyboard to move and clicking. So I'm going to target this mob and mouse over my little Fire Blast there. I don't even know if it's possible. Let's see. Okay. It isn't possible. I won't be able to turn fast enough. So run in, and we are going to Ice Lance to pull him. This is what happens. You can't even turn fast enough to be able to do it. Okay, I'll try to run, turn... Wait a minute. Run, turn, click. God damn it. Okay, I want to repeat this one more time for clarity. You don't have to use the mouse to control your movement, and you don't have to use key bindings to be a good player. In fact, I've met multiple players that don't follow either of these recommendations, and they're able to function at a very high level. I have no idea how, but they do. Following these two recommendations can result in you increasing your DPS because they can increase your responsiveness and provide you with greater control over your character. This really pays off, especially when you're trying to perform a complex single target rotation. Our next recommendation is to make use of an add-on that makes it easy to track all of your debuffs, dots, and cooldowns. Okay, now to illustrate the importance of using an add-on that tracks your dots and your debuffs and that sort of thing, I'm going to pull a mob here with Frostbomb. And let's go ahead and open up right now. Now if I want to see how long I have on the debuff, I have to look all the way up here. And then when I want to see how long the remaining cooldown is, I have to look down at my action bar. So it kind of requires you to look way up and then look way down, which is kind of annoying. Okay, now let's go ahead and turn our button timers on. Okay, so let's walk through a poll to demonstrate how all of these timers in the center of the screen here can help us with our rotation. So let's go ahead and open up with our DPS macro. Okay, Frostbomb, Range Freeze. Let's use Time Warp separately. Alter Time. You can see it is tracking all of the cooldowns. Get another Frostbomb in. Having all the timers on the screen that keep track of all of your debuffs can really make the overall single target rotation a lot easier to perform. Let's now move on to the final recommendation, which is to use a centralized DPS macro. We talked about how to construct a DPS macro in my previous macro writing series, so if you need any assistance on constructing macros or DPS macros, I recommend checking them out. Let's walk through a DPS macro for the mage that I'm currently on. You can see the macro on the screen right now. Okay, so this macro uses our first and second trinkets. It consumes a potion of the Jade Serpent. It uses an engineering trinket on my glove. It uses the Kappa Press item, and then it casts Mirror Image. So let's go ahead and use the DPS macro just to make sure it's working. So we're going to activate, let's find a mob here. Okay, this one. Activate the DPS macro, and notice that it used the first trinket, a potion of the Jade Serpent, and it also cast Mirror Image. Now the other thing that's really nice about the DPS macro is that notice how we have two of our DPS cooldowns that are currently active. Once other cooldowns become available, you can use the DPS macro to invoke them. Like the Tinker is now available. Let's activate it. So it's a very multi-purpose kind of macro. The WoW macro parser only allows you to cast one DPS spell cooldown from within a macro. So in some cases, we'll need to separately activate any additional DPS cooldowns we have from separate key bindings. Okay, consider the following macro. Notice that in the very bottom two lines that it's casting both Time Warp and Mirror Image. So let's go ahead and walk through an example to see what happens when we use it. Okay, so we are going to activate the DPS macro on this mob right here. Start attacking. Okay. Notice that it did not cast Time Warp. It didn't cast Time Warp because the WoW macro system does not allow you to cast more than one spell that does not share the global cooldown. So if we want to cast both Time Warp and Mirror Image, we have to separately cast Time Warp. Another very important aspect of using a DPS macro is DPS macro timing. The best time to use your DPS macro is when you know that you can capitalize on the full, say, 25 or 30 second window. You don't want to use a DPS macro when, say, a boss is like 5 seconds from dying. It would be wasteful. Another good time to use a DPS macro is during a burn phase in a raid boss fight. So they'll call out, burn the boss, and they'll cast Time Warp. That would be another good time to use a DPS macro. And that wraps up this video. Thanks for watching.